Hello to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of my Greek Orthodox Odyssey. What I'd love to do today is to go through and to interpret a vlog by Geron Nektarios. Geron Nektarios is an abbot in Greece who runs a monastery, and he is an exceptional talker and communicator about faith, and more specifically some of the intricacies of the Greek Orthodox faith. And the topic of his talk that I'm going to translate as best I can into English is entitled, "What Does It Mean to be Greek in the Bible?" What does it mean to be Greek in the New Testament? So in the New Testament, whenever they talk about the Greeks, this is the topic of today's discussion. So Geron Nektarios kicks off by talking about the fact that people are not limited to their birthplace, to their patria. Many people seem to think that if you're born in a particular country or you're born in a particular place, then that's the place where you should spend the rest of your life. But Geron Nektarios makes it very clear that God made earth and all of creation for all human beings to enjoy and to live, and not to be limited to certain places only. Otherwise, if this was the case, then Christianity and the Word of God will not flourish and be spread throughout the world and to all people. The reason for the persecutions after Jesus' death, resurrection, and ascension to heaven was part of God's plan, so that the disciples would scatter, would leave their comfort zones, and take the Word of God to the world. This is considered to be part of the divine plan. It is important to understand that the disciples would have loved to have stayed in Israel with their people and lived there for all of their lives, but this would have been extremely detrimental. Another key point that Geron Nektarios makes, and a lot of people are not all that aware of it, is that the first Christians were Jews. The disciples, many of them all of them of course were Jews, but many of them were also Hellenized Jews. And most of the people who followed Jesus in the early days were of the Jewish faith as well. So when we talk about Hellenized Jews, we're talking about Jews who had taken on some of the culture of the Greeks following Alexander the Great's accomplishments, where he expanded the footprint of the Greek state, and with that came philosophy and worship and other things. And it's important to understand that the first converts to Christianity were the Jews who heard from the disciples and Paul and others, and were able to understand clearly what they were talking about, because they would have understood the Old Testament, the prophecies of old from the Old Testament, and the promise of the Messiah. The disciples went and preached to the Jews who were spread through the known world, the Jewish diaspora, so to speak, and went to their meeting places, which of course were the various synagogues spread throughout the world. A special note to make here is that St. Paul did spend quite a bit of time travelling through Greece, and he spent, I think, 18 months to 2 years in Corinth. And the first converts there were not the Greeks, but the Hellenized Jews that lived in and around Corinth and other places like Sicyon and other places that he travelled to. There were lots of Jews in Corinth, as I mentioned, and nearby Sicyonia, because of the Maccabean revolt and other things which scattered the Jews away from their homelands. St. Paul did, of course, preach to the Greeks in terms of the Athenians and others throughout Greece. And there's in Acts we hear about how he preached to the Athenians, to the Athenian Senate, on Areospagos, Mars Rock. An important point to appreciate is that when the word Greek is used in the Bible, it does not specifically mean the Greek people in terms of a race, but it means all people who were Hellenized and were idol worshippers, idolaters, i.e. people who believed in the 12 gods, the polytheists, which included many others, including Romans and Egyptians, who were all pagans. And when St. Paul preached to the Athenians, and he talked about the fact that they were indeed a deeply religious people, and he referred to the fact that they believed in the 12 gods, he referenced a god above all gods, which was the unknown God. The unknown God, which the Greeks and the Athenians would have had no idea about, because they, like many other cultures, had lost their way a long time ago, like most races of people. Only the Jews were the ones who had kept the faith from the time of Adam and Eve. So whilst St. Paul was able to make a few converts from those initial preachings to the Athenians, they thought he was crazy, and they quickly moved him on, preferring to stick to their cultural identity and polytheistic beliefs. It is important to note that the Church does use aspects of Greek philosophy to discuss and to transmit the Word of God, and they are very selective with what they use and how they use it. So the first converts to Christianity were Jews. Christianity began as a sect within the Jewish faith, which grew amongst the Jewish people, the Jewish Hellenized people, and with them spread to the other people who were previously the 12 God worshippers, and more followed with time, and the Greek language was the common language of that time and was the link that connected the pagans to the Hellenized Jews, which also connected them with the New Testament. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. Bye for now.